Merry Christmas, everyone! I'm Alexa, resident Ookie Spooky Girly, and today we're chatting about one of my favorite elements of the holidays, Nutcrackers. Granted, this little cutie isn't haunted, and ditto for all the ones I personally own, and I have quite the collection, but after what we're about to discuss today, I might be rethinking my decorating choices. Question for y'all, what do you love most about Christmas? Let me know in the comments, and welcome to the top 5 cursed Nutcrackers even demons fear at Christmas. Number 5, Night of the Living Toy Store. Back in 2014, Dylan Jones accepted a part-time retail job to have a little extra holiday money. It was on December 22nd when he stopped working there, and yep, it was because of a demented Nutcracker. His heart nearly stopped when he first laid eyes on it, and the poor guy yelped so loudly that his manager came running to see what was wrong. The manager, named Benny by the way, laughed off the scare, but Dylan wasn't as easily reassured. The Nutcracker in question was over 7 feet tall, with eyes that almost seemed to follow Dylan, and it held a spear in its hand that almost looked lifelike with how shiny it was. Other than that, the Nutcracker was clad in a green jacket, red pants, and boasted wild hair. Now, Benny had mentioned that he had found it outside the store in a dumpster in almost perfect condition, and thought that it would add the perfect amount of Christmas ambiance to the store. Well, folks, if I've said it once, I've said it a million times. If somebody's trying to trash something like that, it's for a reason, but let's see where this goes. Well, what do you know? The dang thing scared so many customers from its sheer size, and Dylan kept seeing it move around the store when it was supposed to stay in the toy section. And while it freaked him the heck out, it wasn't quitting level bad. Until the fateful night of December 22nd. Dylan had been drafted to stay late and help the assistant manager, well, with the late shift, which included cleaning the toy aisle. Poor guy did every other task on his to-do list, saving that one till last, when Will asked, what's with the delay? Dylan admitted his fear of the Nutcracker, and while Will agreed with the fear, he was in the middle of telling Dylan it had to be done when a woman stormed into the store with a boxed Elmo doll in her hands. She screamed about her husband buying the wrong Elmo, and how the right one was supposed to be on hold, even getting so far as to demand compensation for her troubles, and if you worked retail, yep, my eyes are rolling as well. Eventually she stormed off to the toy aisle for the right doll, and Dylan grabbed his mop bucket and made his way over to the same aisle. When he got there, the woman ran past him, no longer holding any toys, and out of the store. He didn't make anything of it at first, chuckling at the weird behavior, but as he cleaned, he noticed that a bunch of the toys that were on the ground looked like they'd been kicked. And when he was placing them back up on the shelf, finally noticed that the big Nutcracker was once again missing. Feeling spooked out, he sped up the work he was doing, and was putting the last toy back on the shelf. He saw the reflection of the Nutcracker in the reflective packaging, but now it was, right behind him. Dylan froze momentarily before carrying on like nothing was wrong, certain he was seeing things. But when he turned around, the Nutcracker was almost, nose to nose, blocking him in. Dylan managed to narrowly slip past the large demonic Nutcracker and sprinted to the office Will was in, and narrowly avoided being hit by the Nutcracker's spear that had been thrown at him. Now, Will was standing in the window of the office, completely shocked. I don't blame the guy. The two guys immediately started planning how they could try and get the obviously demonic Nutcracker out of the store, and after a few minutes of tossing ideas around, came up with one I think is pretty brilliant. Dylan ran back out of the office and drew the attention of the Nutcracker, while Will ran and grabbed some of the jump ropes from the sports section, and together they were able to capture the Nutcracker and tow it out of the building while it struggled to get loose. Once they wrangled it into the dumpster, Will, being the heavier of the two, sat on the lid while Dylan ran back inside for lighter fluid, and they doused the thing and burned it with Dylan's lighter. Now that night, when Dylan got home and went to collapse on his bed, he found the Nutcracker's spear sitting on top of his sheets. He grabbed the thing, threw it out of the window into his family's backyard, and the next day used his dad's saw to cut it down and then used it for fire kindling. Best way to do it in my opinion. A+ for getting rid of demons. Number 4, a collector's warning. In this tale, our anonymous protagonist, a humble collector, kind of stumbled upon a peculiar Nutcracker with an otherworldly secret. Now, I found this story on a message board, so make of it what you will. The mundane dance of daily life collided with the supernatural as the Nutcracker's clacking became an ominous symphony, revealing a monstrous entity tied to this seemingly innocent artifact. As our collector grappled with the eerie revelation, he encounters a mysterious old woman in a collision with a disgruntled stranger. Oh boy, things get crazier. So, the regular supernatural twists and turns unfold, leaving our protagonist questioning the fabric of reality. Once again, you've got a Russian stranger, language barriers, and a switcheroo of Nutcrackers, adding layers to this perplexing narrative. The crescendo builds with a chilling confrontation, where the true nature of the Nutcracker is laid bare. A monstrous creature, an interdimensional tracker, and a nightmarish exchange leave our collector reeling. The resolution brings a surreal sense of closure as the Russian stranger departs, leaving behind a broken door and shattered illusions. Now the authorities, oblivious to the cosmic turmoil, play their part in the mundane aftermath. The discarded Nutcracker finds its way into a dumpster, and our collector contemplates a change in hobbies, a wiser choice after a nightmarish encounter. And so the Nutcracker saga concludes, leaving our collector with a newfound appreciation for the mundane and a lingering distrust of holiday decorations. Number 3, this Nutcracker eats meat. When Thomas Young was, well, young, hey, I can't make these names up, folks, he was the classroom bully since he took pride in being large for his age. That's something I'd look back on fondly, but hey, to each their own. Sadly, his home life wasn't the greatest. He lived in a rundown home with his grandma that was very ill, so I can see how he was getting away with plenty. One of the things that Thomas liked to do was play with his grandma's things, often destroying them without her knowledge. During his Christmas break one year, she asked him to go to the attic to retrieve something, and he relished the opportunity, having never been allowed to venture up there before. While he was up there amongst all the dust and knickknacks, he spotted a glass box holding 3 nutcrackers that looked almost brand new. Now, being the naughty person he was at the time, he used a random trophy to break the glass, and grabbed the one that caught his eye most. The thing's face was owl-like, with a small triangular pointy nose above its mouth, and while the uniform it sported was mostly red, it was accessorized with ugly yellow buttons and blue stripes. The hat it wore was tall and round and black, and stringy gray hair fell out of the bottom of it, like the cobwebs that kind of covered the rest of the house. Although this Nutcracker had the ugliest little mouth that Thomas had ever seen. A white set of small round teeth clenched together like the doll was grinning, or just wanted to show him off, were spotted with tiny brown stains, and the way they were clenched together kind of made the doll look hungry. Thomas opened its mouth to test it, and stuck his fingers in it to try and break it. Now the Nutcracker, on its own, clamped down around his fingers, and no matter how hard Thomas tried with his other hand, he couldn't get it to release. He even tried banging it on the ground, and nothing. All of a sudden, he heard a voice whisper, "Meat, flesh, yummy." Thomas froze, and the voice said the same 3 words again. This time while it was talking though, Thomas managed to unclamp it from its fingers, and then ran out of the attic and never returned upstairs. But he can still often hear the whispers whenever he visits his grandma. Props to her for living for so long. Number 2, The Curse of the Ballet. Now this tale was told to me by a former dance teacher over a decade ago, so forgive me if I mess up any of the details. Yep, this emo girlie used to be a very cutesy ballerina. No, you're not getting the pictures. If I remember correctly, an eager young ballerina was preparing to audition for her ballet school's annual production of the Nutcracker, and was determined to snag a soloist position, because who isn't? One day during a walk to clear her mind, she noticed an old Nutcracker in the window of a consignment shop, and felt as if she needed him. So when she went inside and found the price to be reasonable, the little guy went home with her. He was stunning at first glance, fitted in a shiny silver suit, golden crown, and holding a valiant sword. She didn't notice that he was cross-eyed at first, or that the lever that controlled his mouth was temperamental, if you will. She found herself dreaming about him every night after he entered her possession, and whenever she went out for the day, she would find him in a new place when she returned. Like she'd leave him on her bed, come home, he's on the windowsill. Leave him on the windowsill, come home, he's hanging from the tree. Yet she kept him, even going so far as to practice dancing with him. And when she landed the role of Clara, she was positive having him around got her the part. Now after the Christmas season ended, she tried tucking him in the back of her closet. Christmas is over, but he was determined to stay out. He kept coming out of the closet, appearing in a new spot. Eventually her parents came to visit, and she sent him home with them. Luckily going on a plane ride kept him away, but that's just creepy, man. Number 1, A Snowstorm You Can't Forget. When Lawrence was young, perhaps even so young as, this many years old, he read the story of the Nutcracker ballet for the first time. He remembers that Christmas vividly. It was the year his mom was sick with a cold, and there was a snowstorm so wicked that they couldn't leave their house. And the storm had also caused the heating system to struggle, so he and his mom spent most of their time, curled up in blankets and blanket forts and trying to make a fire in the fireplace, with what kind of kindling they had. The night he finished his story, he was struggling to sleep from the cold and the sounds of his mother coughing, and he heard a voice ask from the foot of his bed, "Having trouble sleeping, little one?" He peeked out from under his blankets to see the Nutcracker that had been placed in his room as holiday decor. The one he had dubbed Alexandre was suddenly sitting right on the end of the bed. Not on the bookshelf anymore, just, there. The Nutcracker spoke again. "Worried about your mother, huh? I'll go down to the basement and see what I can do about the stove." Lawrence couldn't help but stare as the Nutcracker, appeared to move on its own out of his room. He managed to fall asleep and assured himself it was all just a weird dream. Now the next day, Lawrence and his mom were still housebound from the storm, and the heating system was still out of whack. When it was time to go to bed, he hesitated. But after moving his Nutcracker into his toy trunk and piling books on top of the container, he curled up. Sadly, sleep didn't come easy, and while he was still shivering, he heard the voice once again. "Psst, lad, are you asleep?" Lawrence couldn't believe his ears. It couldn't be. He carefully raised his blanket and came nose to nose with the mustachioed face of the soldier. And, he jumped a foot in the air from the shock. The Nutcracker spoke once again. "Sorry to wake you up, but I think I found what the problem with the stove is. The basement is covered in snow." Now Lawrence couldn't bring himself to speak, and continued to stare in awe at the Nutcracker, which only frustrated the wooden toy. "Boy, do you know what I would give to be able to talk all the time? And you don't use your voice? I ought to teach you a lesson." Now Lawrence was a little scared by this point, so he ducked back under his covers and plugged his ears until he fell into a restless sleep. The next morning when he woke up, he cautiously peeked over his covers, and once again, no sign of the Nutcracker. He ran to his mom's room to tell her everything, and froze once he noticed his Nutcracker suddenly sitting on top of her dresser. His mom was awake, and when she attempted to talk to Lawrence, her voice was gone. The poor guy was shocked and rushed back to his room, convinced he was still sleeping. He tried going back to sleep, but once he realized he was very awake, broke down sobbing, knowing what his Nutcracker had done, to his mom. That night he vowed that he would be brave enough to deal with a demented toy once and for all. So when he went to bed, he made sure to stay awake. And what do you know? The familiar voice spoke to him once again from the end of his bed. "Are you still concerned for your mom, lad?" Lawrence swallowed his fear and responded, "Yes, sir. Could you please give her voice back?" The Nutcracker laughed and responded maybe, before leaving once again. Lawrence fell asleep, and when the next day came, his mom was still as sick as ever, but her voice was back. While she was taking a nap, Lawrence found the strength to grab the Nutcracker and set it on fire in the fireplace. He swore he heard it screaming as he did. And sure, his mom was furious when she woke up and realized he set a fire without her permission and destroyed a Nutcracker, but later that day the snowstorm finally stopped, and she slowly started to heal from her sickness, so maybe it was for the best. Yeah, he never bought another Nutcracker ever again. And that brings us to the end of our time, and while I'm glad the Nutcracker Ballet has had such an impact on my life, I'm glad none of my Nutcrackers have ever come to life or haunted me. Yet, I should probably, knock on wood. If you enjoyed my ramblings today, could you help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more cursed Christmas content from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people. Merry Christmas!